Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Welcome in the class. These days we are studying the research process, and in the last class, as you remember, we discussed first two steps of the scientific research process. Our discussion is based on a book. Its title is Research Methods for the Behavioral Sciences. The book is written by Frederick Gravater and Lorianne Forzano. The research process. It is the first chapter of this book, and section is 1.4. And first two steps, the first step of the research process we studied is find an idea or select a topic and conduct the literature review. And the second step was to form a hypothesis, come up with a come up with an explanation. And now we discuss the step three, the third step in the research process. Determine how you will define and measure your variables. Determine how you will define and measure your variables. In the last class, we also discussed variables. What does variable mean? And what are the different variables in social sciences, if you remember? When making a specific prediction for a research study, you must also decide how to define and measure your variables. When making a specific prediction for a research study, you must also decide how to define your variables and how to measure your variables. For example, suppose your hypothesis says watching violence on TV leads to more aggressive behavior. For example, suppose your hypothesis says watching violence on television leads to more aggressive behavior. Suppose you plan to study preschool children as participants. You plan to study preschool children, the children who do not go to school yet. They are too young. So you plan to take them as participants in your research study. Your hypothesis predicts if we observe preschool children, those who watch more television, violence will be more aggressive than who watch less. Before we can test this prediction, we need to decide how to tell the difference between more violence and less violence, more and less TV violence. How to tell the difference between more and less aggression. Specifically, we must define and measure television violence aggressive behavior. Specifically, we must define and measure number one, we must define television violence and we must measure television violence. And similarly, we must define aggressive behavior and we must measure aggressive behavior. The variables in your hypothesis must be defined so that they can be measured by observation. So, before measuring the variables, we need to define them. We should define them. Usually, these decisions are made by looking at previous research. We check how other researchers defined and measured their variables. By defining variables for observation and measurement, we are turning the hypothesis into a specific, well defined research study. When we define our variables, we define them for observation and measurement, and by defining them, we turn the hypothesis into a specific, research study into a well defined research study, making it based on empirical observations. This step is necessary before we can actually test the hypothesis. So, defining them is necessary. The key idea is to make the hypothesis empirically testable. How we define and measure variables depends on the participants. Aggressive behavior in preschool children is measured very differently than in adults. How we define and measure variables depends on the participants. Aggressive behavior in preschool children is measured very differently than in adults. Step 4: identify and select the participants or subjects for the study. This is the fourth step of the research process. Identify the participants or objects, select the participants or objects for your research project. To evaluate a hypothesis scientifically, we first use it to make a specific prediction. So, first we make a specific prediction. This prediction should be something that can be observed and tested in a research study. One part of designing the study is to decide who will participate. If the participants are human, they are called participants. If they are non human, they are called subjects. For example, the zoologists, experts in zoology, they also conduct experiments on animals: buffaloes, cows, camels, rats. So, those animals are their subjects when they conduct experiments on them. So, if the participants are non human, they are called subjects. If they are human, they are called participants. It is the researcher's responsibility to plan for the safety and well being of participants. Inform them about all important details of the research. If you are conducting research on human beings, it is as the researcher, it is your responsibility to take care of their safety, to take care of their well-being, to so that they are not harmed, and they should not be they should not suffer from any serious consequences if they are taking part in your research project. So you should also take them into confidence before starting the research, that this is the purpose of the research, and this is how we are going to uh, make you a part of our research. So inform them about all important details of the research, especially explain any risk or danger involved. If there is a risk or if there is a danger involved, so it is the responsibility of the researcher to inform the participants before the research. You must also decide if there will be restrictions on participants' characteristics. If you are going to put some restrictions on them, so it is also your responsibility to inform them before starting the research project. For example, you may choose preschool children, or be more specific, like using only 4-year-old boys from middle income households with a specific learning disability. You must also decide how many participants you need, where and how to recruit the participants. You should also decide. When steps 3 and 4 are complete, you are closer to creating a specific research study. This study will evaluate the prediction from step 2 and test the original hypothesis. Specifically, you have defined and measured the variables. Described, you have described exactly who will be observed and measured. Variables can usually be defined and measured in different ways for different groups. This means there are often several different studies that can test the same general hypothesis. Here are two examples of research studies designed to test the same general hypothesis. General hypothesis. It's an example of a general hypothesis. Sugar consumption is related to activity level. More sugar in the diet leads to higher activity levels, and less sugar leads to lower activity levels. Sugar consumption is related to activity level. More sugar in the diet leads to higher activity levels, and less sugar leads to lower activity levels. It is a hypothesis, general hypothesis. So it can be tested with different studies. For example, study one is preschool children who get a high sugar snack in the morning will show higher activity levels during a 30-minute observation period compared to children who get a low sugar snack. एक ग्रुप को आप बिस्कुट दे देते हैं जो ज़्यादा मीठे हैं, ठीक है। फिर देखते हैं कि वो अब अगले आधे घंटे में कितनी एक्टिविटी करते हैं, कितनी छलांगे लगाते हैं। और जो दूसरा ग्रुप है बच्चों का, उनको आप नमकीन बिस्किट दे देते हैं, या उनमें अगर ऐसे बिस्कुट हैं जिनमें शुगर नहीं है, शुगर थोड़ी है, तो उनको भी आप ऑब्ज़र्व करते हैं अगले आधा घंटा के वो कितनी एक्टिविटी करते हैं। तो इससे आप ऑब्ज़र्व कर सकते हैं कि शुगर से जो एक्टिविटी का लेवल है, वो उस पे कोई असर पड़ता है या नहीं। Second study is adolescents who get soda with their school lunch will be more active than adolescents who get water with their lunch. तो ये भी एक तरीका है कि जो बच्चे स्कूल गए हुए हैं उनके दो ग्रुप बनाएं। एक ग्रुप को लंच के साथ आप दे दें सोडा, सोडे में शुगर बहुत ज़्यादा होती है, और दूसरे ग्रुप को आप सोडा ना दें, लंच के साथ सादा पानी दे दें, तो इसका मतलब कि उन्होंने शुगर कम ली। और फिर देखें कि उसके बाद दोनों ग्रुप्स की एक्टिविटी में क्या फ़र्क नज़र आता है। तो इससे पता चल सकता है कि ज़्यादा शुगर से एक्टिविटी ज़्यादा होती है या नहीं। Activity will be measured by having each student wear a pedometer in the afternoon. Activity will be measured by having each student wear a pedometer in the afternoon. Each of these studies involves a specific event that can be observed. Ultimately, the research study will test the original hypothesis by making these observations. Step 5. Select a research strategy. Choosing a research strategy means deciding on the general approach you will use to test your hypothesis. स्ट्रेटजी का ये मतलब है कि आपकी अप्रोच क्या होगी अपने हाइपोथेसिस को टेस्ट करने के लिए। The choice of a research strategy is usually based on one of two factors. The choice of a research strategy is usually based on one of Now, the first factor is the type of question asked. What is the type of your question, for example? Consider, for example, the following two research questions. Is there a relationship between sugar consumption and activity level for preschool children? Will increasing the level of sugar consumption for preschool children cause an increase in their activity level? At first glance, it may seem that the two questions are the same, but in terms of research, they are usually quite different. They will need different research studies. They may also give different answers. Consider the following two questions. Is there a relationship between intelligence and income for 40-year-old men? Is there a relationship between intelligence and income for 40-year-old men? Will increasing the salary for 40-year-old men cause an increase in their IQ scores? In this case, it should be clear that the two questions are not the same. They are different questions. They may lead to different conclusions. Often, ethical considerations or other factors limit what you can do in the lab, in the laboratory. Examples include equipment availability or other practical limits. These factors can force you to choose one research strategy over another. Step 6. Select a research design. Selecting a research design means deciding on the specific methods and procedures for your study, that how you will test your hypothesis. Ask yourself, does the question need a detailed study of one person or a study of the average behavior of a large group? You can ask this question to yourself. Should you observe the same group under different treatments or different groups for what each treatment? This is also an important question. Should you observe the same individuals over time or compare different people at the same time? So, when we design our research project, we ask these questions to ourselves and then we decide. And this way, we design our research project and how we will test our hypothesis. Answering these questions will help you choose a specific design. The seventh step, conduct the study. Now you have designed your study and it is the time to conduct the actual study. Now you are ready to collect the data, decide whether the study will be done in a laboratory or in the field, real world. Implement all your earlier decisions about various aspects of this study. You have already taken different decisions. Now it is time to implement those decisions, to act on those decisions. So you have made decisions on manipulating, observing, measuring, controlling, and recording. So manipulating, when you to test, you give the stimulus. इनकी डिटेल्स आगे चल के आएंगी कि मसलन आपको मैं एक मिसाल देता हूँ कि आप ये देखना चाह रहे हैं कि जो टीवी प्रोग्राम्स हैं या रेडियो प्रोग्राम्स हैं, इनका लोगों के वोटिंग बिहेवियर पर कोई असर होता है या नहीं। तो आप दो ग्रुप बनाते हैं 20-20 लोगों के, उनको दो मुख्तलिफ कमरों में आप ले जाते हैं, बिठाते हैं। तो एक ग्रुप के एक कमरे में ना आप टीवी प्रोग्राम चला देते हैं जिसमें मुख्तलिफ सियासी मसाइल को, मामलात को डिस्कस किया जा रहा है, मुख्तलिफ लीडर्स को, सियासी लीडर्स को या पार्टियों को डिस्कस किया जा रहा है, या किसी एक पार्टी की फेवर में वो प्रोग्राम है। दूसरे ग्रुप में जो लोग हैं उनको आप वो प्रोग्राम नहीं दिखाते। तो प्रोग्राम दिखाने के बाद आप दोनों ग्रुप्स की जो है ना उन वो वोटिंग करवाते हैं। तो फिर आप देखते हैं कि वो जिनको आपने दिखाया है प्रोग्राम, टीवी प्रोग्राम दिखाया है, उन्होंने किस पार्टी के हक में और खिलाफ कितने वोट डाले, और जो न्यूट्रल ग्रुप है उसकी वोटिंग पैटर्न क्या था। तो इस तरह से आप अंदाज़ा लगाने की कोशिश करते हैं, ऑब्जर्व करने की कोशिश करते हैं कि जो टीवी प्रोग्राम्स हैं उनका लोगों के वोट डालने पर कोई असर पड़ता है या नहीं, या कितना असर पड़ता है। तो इसको कहते हैं स्टिमुलस। वो जो आपने उनको टीवी प्रोग्राम दिखाया, वो एक टेस्ट था, और जो टीवी प्रोग्राम था वो स्टिमुलस था। उसको कहते हैं स्टिमुलस। तो उससे आपने मैनिपुलेट किया, टीवी प्रोग्राम दिखा के आपने मैनिपुलेट किया उनको, सब्जेक्ट्स आपने पार्टिसिपेंट्स को, जिसको कहते हैं मैनिपुलेटिंग। फिर आप साथ नोट भी करते रहे, ऑब्जर्व किया आपने उनके, जब वोटिंग कराई आपने फिर उसका काउंट किया तो उसको ऑब्जर्विंग कहते हैं। फिर आपने देखा फ़र्क क्या है दोनों ग्रुप्स का, मेजर करके आपने देखा। तो जो पहला ग्रुप है ना वो कंट्रोल, इसमें कंट्रोल ग्रुप होता है, कंट्रोलिंग एंड रिकॉर्डिंग। तो आप कंट्रोल करते हैं ना उस वक्त कि किस ग्रुप को वो आपने दिखाना है प्रोग्राम, किस ग्रुप को नहीं दिखाना। और रिकॉर्डिंग भी करते हैं कि किस ग्रुप ने किस पार्टी को कितने वोट डाले, किस कैंडिडेट को कितने वोट डाले, उसको कहते हैं रिकॉर्डिंग। स्टेप 8, evaluate the data. Once the data are collected, use statistical methods to examine and evaluate them. Use statistical methods to examine the data and to evaluate the data. उसमें आप उनकी मसलन एवरेज निकाल सकते हैं। स्टैटिस्टिक्स में एवरेज को मीन कहते हैं, MEAN, मीन। एक मोड होता है, उसका थोड़ा सा फ़र्क होता है मीन और मोड का। तो स्टैटिस्टिक्स पढ़ लें तो अच्छा है, ना भी पढ़ें तो कोई इतना वो ज़रूरी नहीं है, आप रिसर्चर बन सकते हैं पॉलिटिकल साइंस के अंदर। लेकिन आप लोगों को मेरे ख्याल एक कोर्स कोर्स पढ़ाया जाता है शायद, इंट्रोडक्शन टू स्टैटिस्टिक्स का, तो उसका आपको फ़ायदा हो सकता है। दिस इंक्लूड्स drawing graphs, computing means or correlations to describe your data. स्टेटिस्टिकल मेथड जब अप्लाई करते हैं उसका मतलब ये है कि आपने ग्राफ बनाने हैं। अब ग्राफ बनाने तो वैसे ही आप जानते हैं, उसमें वर्ड में भी ग्राफ बन जाता है, एक्सेल में भी ग्राफ बन जाता है। आपने प्राइमरी स्कूल से पढ़ा हुआ है मैथ में ग्राफ बनाने का तरीका। और कंप्यूटिंग मीन्स, मीन एवरेज को कहते हैं, एवरेज भी निकालना आपको आती है। कोरिलेशंस, कोरिलेशंस अगर नहीं आते तो उसमें आप कोई कंप्यूटर का कोई सॉफ्टवेयर यूज़ कर सकते हैं, कोई स्टैटिस्टिक्स यूज़ कर सकते हैं टू डिस्क्राइब योर डेटा। Using inferential statistics to see if results from your participants can be generalized to the population. Ninth step, report the results. An important part of science is that observations and results must be public. अब आपने उनको पब्लिश करना है, दुनिया को बताना भी है कि ये टेस्ट मैंने किया है, ये ऑब्जर्व किया है, ये एक्सपेरिमेंट किया है, तो उसके ये फाइंडिंग्स आई हैं, ये रिजल्ट्स आए हैं। तो ये नाइन्थ स्टेप है। This is done by writing a report describing what was done, what was found, how the findings were interpreted. Two reasons to report research results. अच्छा, अब पब्लिश करना क्यों ज़रूरी है, उनको लोग दुनिया को बताना क्यों ज़रूरी है, उसकी दो रीजंस हैं। The results become part of general knowledge for others to use or build on. आप दुनिया को बताएंगे कि ये इतना काम मैंने किया है, तो बाकी लोग फिर उससे आगे काम कर सकते हैं उसके ऊपर मज़ीद। तो एक तो ये फ़ायदा है पब्लिश करने का। दूसरी रीज़न ये है कि अदर रिसर्चर्स कैन रेप्लिकेट और चैलेंज योर स्टडी। हाँ, अगर उसमें आपसे कोई गलती हो गई, कोई कमी पेशी रह गई, तो दूसरे लोग उसको दोहराएंगे उसी तजर्बे को, और वो देखेंगे कि क्या वही रिज़ल्ट आते हैं या डिफरेंट रिज़ल्ट्स आते हैं। 10th स्टेप, स्टेप 10 है रिफाइन और रिफॉर्मुलेट योर रिसर्च आइडिया। का आपका जो रिसर्च आइडिया है उसको आप फिर रिफाइन करें, रिफॉर्मुलेट करें, एक नया हाइपोथेसिस बनाएं, और शुरू से फिर आप उसको ऑब्जर्व करें। तो साइंटिफिक रिसर्च इस तरह से चलती है, वो फाइनल कभी नहीं होती। आप करते रहते हैं रिसर्च, नई से नई फाइंडिंग्स आती रहती हैं, और आप उसके इन डेप्थ अंडरस्टैंडिंग आपको हासिल होती रहती है उस टॉपिक की जिस पे आप रिसर्च करते हैं। मोस्ट रिसर्च स्टडीज क्रिएट मोर क्वेश्चंस देन द आंसर। तो जब आप एक प्रोजेक्ट करते हैं तो आपके जहन में और बहुत सारे सवाल उठते हैं, कई क्वेश्चंस आते हैं। तो रिसर्च करने से और कई नए रिसर्च प्रोजेक्ट्स आपके जहन में आ जाते हैं। इफ़ योर रिजल्ट्स सपोर्ट योर ओरिजिनल हाइपोथेसिस, it does not mean you have a final answer. Instead, the new information lets you extend your original question or make it more precise. आप अपने जो ओरिजिनल रिसर्च क्वेश्चन है उसको रिवाइज कर सकते हैं। उस क्वेश्चन को आप रीवर्ड कर सकते हैं, एक नया रंग दे सकते हैं उस क्वेश्चन को, और फिर एक नया रिसर्च प्रोजेक्ट कर सकते हैं। Results that support a hypothesis usually lead to new questions in two ways. Number one, test the boundaries of the result. Number two, refine the original research question. Test the boundaries of the result. Suppose your study shows higher academic performance is related to higher self esteem in elementary school children. Will the same result be found for middle school adolescents? Maybe adolescents care more about peer respect than respect from parents or teachers. Maybe academic success is less valued by adolescents. In this case, you might not expect the same relationship for adolescents, or you might look at success outside academics. Is there a relationship between athletic success and self esteem? The goal is to see if your result applies to other areas. How general are the results of your study? The second way your results lead to new question is refine the original research question. If your results show a relationship between academic success and self-esteem, the next question is what causes the relationship? What is the underlying mechanism that links school success to higher self-esteem? The original question asked, does a relationship exist? Now you are asking, why does the relationship exist? Results that do not support your hypothesis also create new questions. अगर जो रिजल्ट्स आ गए हैं वो आपके हाइपोथेसिस को साबित नहीं करते, तो वो भी बड़ा इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ है। उससे नए सवाल आपके जहन में उठते हैं। One reason for negative results is that one of the premises is wrong. For example, we assume academic success is highly valued and respected. Maybe this is not true. A new research question could be, how important is academic success to parents, teachers, or elementary students? Research is not a straight start to finish process. It is more like a spiral. It is more like a spiral or that returns to a new hypothesis. The process of asking questions, gathering evidence, and asking new questions is part of the scientific method. One key feature of the scientific method is that it always gives tentative answers. Answers are tentative. कोई चीज़ फाइनल हतमी कतई नहीं होती साइंस में। वो कल को चैलेंज हो सकती है, नए चीज़ें सामने आ सकती हैं। There are no final answers. For example, the theory of evolution. Even after years of evidence, evolution is still called a theory. No matter how much evidence supports it, the answer is also open to challenge. The theory of evolution deals with the questions like how this universe was created, how did it come into being, how humans came into being, how life came into being. So, this is the theory of evolution. So no one can prove or disprove it. So it still remains theory. It has not become any law. No matter how much evidence supports it, the answer is always open to challenge. Research answers can eventually be revised or refuted. Refuted, they can be disproved. यानी गलत साबित करना, रिफ्यूट का मतलब है गलत साबित करना। तो जो रिसर्च आंसर्स होते हैं वो रिवाइज भी हो सकते हैं और गलत भी साबित हो सकते हैं। The 10 steps in the research process. अब ये उनकी बात आखिर में एक लिस्ट मैंने यहाँ बनाई थी, इनको ज़रा देख लें। Step 1 is find a research idea. Select a topic and search the literature to find an unanswered question. Step 2, form a hypothesis and a prediction. Step 3, determine how you will define and measure your variables. Step 4, identify and select the participants or subjects for the study. Step 5, select a research strategy. Step 6, select a research design. Step 7, conduct the study. Step 8, evaluate the data. Step 9, report the results. And step 10, refine or reformulate your research idea. So with this, today's presentation is over. अब मैं यूट्यूब को क्लोज करता हूँ और आपको ज्वाइन करता हूँ गूगल मीट पे इन फ्यू सेकंड्स.